Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, Jonny Lipsham.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Live with me, Jonny Lipsham, from JonnyLipshamStudios.co.uk. Hope everybody is doing well. Hang on, little notifications just popped up. Later. There we go. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope you've had a good week. I've had a good one. Been not too busy. It's been quite quiet, actually. And I've been looking forward very much to this particular episode. Not for any particular massive reason, other than it's just another chance for me to get to talk to you guys, which is something I look forward to all week. I look forward to doing this. I also look forward to doing Songwriting Simplified with Jonny Gibe over on his Home Studio Trainer channel. On Wednesdays at the same time, 6 p.m. Central Time. If you've never been along to that, then please, if you are into songwriting, if you're into composing, if you're into arranging, anything to do with that kind of thing, composing, arranging, songwriting, lyrics, writing, if that is your thing or something that you're interested in doing, then get yourself along to the Home Studio Trainer YouTube channel on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Central Time, and Jonny and I host that show together, and he kind of asks me some questions. You guys ask us both a lot of questions, and it's just a great time with great chat, great banter, and I hopefully pass on what I have learned, not just academically, what I have learned from, my musicology degree and all of that, but also what I have learned from writing songs since I was about 7 or 8 years old. So, I hope that those are helpful to you, those that do come. Those of you that haven't yet been to one of them, come along, check it out, see if it's something that you like. And if you do, stick around. A lot of the crowd that you see here in the chat will be along on Wednesdays anyway, because they love Jonny and they love me. Quite why you guys love me, I don't know, but I love the fact that you do, and that's awesome. So let's go see who is in the chat here. Mike was in first. Wow, Mike Neighbor was in first. He says, hello, I'll be around at some point during the show. Then John Lake came in an hour before showtime and said, it's Sunday, so this must be Scotland. Happy Sunday to all. Yes, this is Scotland. This is Edinburgh, Scotland. And Gerard is here also saying that he is redoing his studio in his home, which is a big job. It most certainly is. I have rebuilt my studio a couple of times over the years, and it's always a big job. It'll take the last time I did it, it took a couple of days, and that was to move everything into here and get it all set up. I mean, once I got my gear on my desk, got it all connected up and running Studio One, that didn't take very long. That took about 3 or 4 hours tops. But it was finding a place for everything else, like this desk over here, my bass, my guitar, my amps, my sax, my trumpet. Where are they going to go? And my drums were in here to start with, but really there was just nowhere near enough room for those. I was being a little overambitious. But yeah. It is quite the challenge. So I'm with you there, Gerard, for sure. Kyle is here. Alps Media, the sponsor of Home Studio Trainer, is here. Good to see you guys. Welcome. And let's see, Bobby Booth is here. Awesome. We can start now because he's here. Lloyd Hansen is here as well. Robert Ziegler from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Good to see you, my friend. Welcome. Glad you have returned. It's awesome. And Ziggy, I think, is here. Did I see his name? That's you. Yeah, sorry, I read that wrong. Apologies. Dwayne, I think, is here too. Yep, and Mika is here. Kevin's Guitar Stories is here. Awesome. Ken, one of my faithful mods, is here. Glad to have him here to help me out. Billy Morgan is here, asking about the I/O station. He and I were chatting a little bit offline. I don't have one, unfortunately, by which to be able to demonstrate anything. And I've only got the one camera, which is this one up here. I'm not like Jonny. I don't have multiple cameras. Maybe down the line, maybe in the future, I will be able to have a few more cameras, but right now I've only got the one. Let's see, David, he is here. He says, Monday Morning Live, love it. Yes, of course, you are down in Australia. So I think you're down in Australia. If memory serves, that's where you are. Ken says, I followed your and Mike's advice and got rid of the shelves on the desk, so now my monitors are angled up at ear level. What a difference it is. That's very, very cool to hear, Ken. I can remember, early on in the kind of genesis, the development of Jonny Lipsham Studios, I had the speakers in the wrong place for quite a while. And often wondered why, the results of my work was just not what I was looking for at all. And, I've worked in professional studios. That's where I learned. I learned in a professional studio. I learned on an SSL console. I learned with a Studio Tape machine, and Pro Tools and Cubase and Logic were there in that studio. That's where I learned. But I have to admit, I hadn't really thought about speaker placement when it came to my own studio. I thought a little bit about speaker placement in that studio, I guess mostly because it was there. It was already set up, so I didn't really have to think about it. But, having your own studio, it's a little bit different. And there are some cases where you are kind of limited by the space you have and by the shape of your room that you have as to where you put the speakers. But really, the ideal is for your ears to be between the woofers and the tweeters of your speaker. So your ears are kind of in that little space between the two. And the two speakers should be pointed right at your ears. So effectively, you should be sat at the apex of an equilateral triangle. So the speakers need to be equally distant apart. So, and the best way to do that is measure the distance between the center of the woofers from one to the other, measure that distance, and then take that tape measure, do it with the tape measure rather than the ruler. Take that tape measure from the center of the second cone and swing it across to your ear and towards your ear. And you'll find out whether you're sat too far back or too far forward. And you can adjust your seating position from there. Your ears need to be at that apex, which is known as the sweet spot, where you are in a position where you're going to get the best stereo image. Now, you may well not be the kind of guy that is into mixing. Your thing is composing. But if your thing is composing, you still need to be in that sweet spot because the stereo image is going to be very important to your compositional work. Because, you want the end product. After the mix engineer and the mastering engineer have got hold of your work, you want them to have the stereo imaging side of things well in place. So by the time it gets to the mix engineer, the work already has a good sense of space and a good sense of balance between left and right, between front and back. And it makes the mix engineer's life a lot easier if in production and even in pre-production, in actual songwriting and composing, that is already in mind. So it's important that even as a composer, you are sat in that spot as well. Acoustic treatment in the, writing phase is less of an issue. It's less important. But it will certainly help because it will mean that, if you're recording your work into a DAW, even if it's scratch tracks to be replaced, if you're doing things with orchestral mock-ups, for example, then, later down the line, you replace them with real musicians, you still want to hear accurately what's coming out of your speakers, so that, again, you have that balance right between loud and soft across the whole range of your music. Acoustic treatment, I think even at the writing phase is helpful. It's not essential, but it's helpful. Certainly in the recording and mixing and mastering phases, acoustic treatment is an absolute must. It is essential if you're going to get high quality, high caliber work that, you know, is going to compete with what is out there in the real world. But yeah, I'm very glad, Ken, to hear that you've got rid of those shelves and it's made a massive difference. I keep hitting my mic. Sorry about that. So yeah, that's cool, man. Very cool. Yes. Robert says, I am Ziggy. I just have not found out how to change my name on the chat. Cool. Thanks for that. That helps. I need to just remember that. Thanks for that. David says, yeah, Harvey Bay, Queensland. Nice. I have family in Australia. They are mostly based around the Melbourne area. For the most part, that's where most of my Australian family are. But yeah, I love Australia. And Marcos is here. Hello, Marcos. Good to see you. Ken says acoustic treatment is going to be my next step. Awesome. That's great to hear. I mean, when I first built out my studio, to start with, it was in one part of our lounge area in an old place that we lived in. And so it wasn't entirely possible to treat the space as I wanted to. So I basically just had panels up on this side because on this side there was no wall. The wall was like way, you know, another 20 feet that way. So I really saw that there wasn't really any point in putting anything here or even way 20 feet over on the other side. So I didn't. I only treated this side with just one panel. And then there was just like one bass trap over in this corner. And that was all I had at the start. And then I moved the studio into its own dedicated room. And that's when I went to town and properly treated the space on both sides, bass trapped in both corners, and there was a window behind the screen here, so I couldn't treat that obviously. And then I treated further down the walls on both sides to catch secondary reflections, and then I put some treatment on the back. I had a door at the back there, you may recall. And I didn't need a bass trap in the corner at the back before because I had that big chest of drawers at the back, if you remember. If you remember my old space. But now I don't have that. I have a much bigger room. So we are going to be moving again in the summertime. And hopefully this time it's going to be the final move. Hopefully we're going to be able to buy a house. And that will be us. That will be where we stay for the foreseeable future. So I'm really looking forward to that, and that means I'll be able to do a lot more with the room in terms of treatment. At the moment, I've got some very basic panels that are really only probably treating the highs in this room, and the bass is being treated with bass trapping. But you know, kind of like a lot of the broadbands in this room aren't necessarily being absorbed terribly well, because you know, being in a rental apartment, I'm limited as to what I can put up on the wall, up on the walls with, you know, getting permission from the landlord. Fortunately, here we have great landlords who are extremely kind, extremely generous, and they know what I do for a living. So, you know, they were just like, yeah, you can absolutely put some panels up on the wall, you know. So I'm currently hanging them like picture frames with a pin and string onto, and the panels are glued onto card. And then I'm just basically using a pin, single pin with string, and the string is attached to the rear of the card, and that holds the panels up like picture frames. And it means I have very few pinholes to fill when we leave. So yeah. I can't wait to be in a place to call our own, that we own, and we can do whatever the heck we want. And I'm actually going to be, I've already been looking at acoustic treatment packages for that new space. We don't know what it is going to be like, or if it's going to be as big as this, or is it going to be smaller than this. I don't know. I'm hoping at least the same size as this, if not maybe a bit bigger. That'd be nice because I've got more gear that I'm, now than I've had before. So there you go. Mike Neighbour's in the house. Good to see you, Mike. David says, my philosophy with guitars, amps, studio, etc. is just do the best you can with what you've got. Get better gear as you can afford it. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is mine as well. Do the best with what you have and accept the fact that for the vast majority of spaces that you are going to be in, they are not purpose-built studio spaces. The room is not designed for recording in. They're not designed for mixing in. They're, part of a domestic house, so they've never been designed with that in mind. So there will always be, because of that, there will always be things you cannot get past. There'll be some issues that you just won't be able to get over. You may have like a wall that has just mirrors that are built into the wall. There's, that's the most reflective surface you can get. There's nothing you can do to get past that. You might have a window on the first reflection points on either side of you. Glass is a very reflective surface. There is not a lot you can do about that. Now, there are things you can do if you have windows at those points, and that is you can get theatre acoustic curtains that's designed for theatre venues that they use for absorbing sound. And that's not too terribly expensive, and you just put it up as curtains across the windows. It does mean that your room may well not have as much natural light in it as you would like. But, when you're not recording or you're not mixing, get those curtains back, let the natural light into the room. And then when you're recording or you're mixing, draw those curtains across, and that will tame quite a lot of the, kind of like the broadband mid-range, as well as the highs, and may even take out some of the lows as well if it's quite thick curtain material, and that will help a lot. And that will certainly take care of reflections off the glass if you have windows in those locations. Or you can get gobos. That's another option. Is get some thick paneling that's about this thick, and build them yourself if you've got the DIY skills for it. Build out a wood frame, fill it with a couple of mattresses or something like that. Wrap it with something nice to look at that looks, professional, some cloth of some kind. And if you've got the skills for it, put them on wheels. And then all you need to do is just wheel them across so that they block out the reflections off the windows. And then, like I say, when you're not recording, you can wheel them back out of the way. I've seen that done before, and it's a good improvisational way around dealing with those kind of first reflection issues. If you're in that kind of a room, which is less than ideal. So yeah, you're not going to be able to get past some things. Like if, for example, you're in an attic space and you've got like apex ceilings like this, they're not going to be reflective in the same way as a regular wall is going to be in a room, because these walls are facing each other. So the reflections off the wall come back off the wall and back into your listening space, and they create standing waves. They create room modes. They create phase cancellation problems, those kind of things. And that's why you acoustically treat such a space. But with apex ceilings, you're going to get a whole other bunch of acoustic issues, and you may not be able to get past them. You may not be able to treat them, and if you can't, you're going to have to work around it. You're going to have to maybe mix at a lower volume so that there's less air being moved, less sound coming out, and therefore the energy of the sound will hopefully be diffused before it gets to the reflective surfaces. That's another way around it. So yeah, absolutely, David, you're spot on. You just have to work with what you have. And yeah, learn your room. Learn what your room sounds like and what good music sounds like in your room. If you're anything like vaguely musical, you know what good music sounds like. As soon as you move into a new space, play good music on the speakers that you use for mixing or recording on in that room, and learn what good music, good mixes sound like in that room. And then you'll be less likely to be deceived by issues within the room, because you know what good music sounds like, and you can use that as a reference point, as kind of like that is your 0 point for your room. So that's also a good thing. How to get rid of noisy neighbors? Yeah. I wish I knew how to deal with those, because we have some neighbors that like to occasionally have a rave at 2 o'clock in the morning. So you get, EDM, or you get drum and bass that, makes the walls shake at 2 o'clock in the morning. We call the police. That's how we deal with it. And they get fined. And eventually they'll get moved on, because they are council tenants, which means the council own their property and they are renting from the council. So they'll just get moved on, hopefully. So there we go. I hope that was helpful. Mike says, drumming is still causing me pain in my right shoulder. Yeah. I hope you're okay, mate. Look after yourself. Go and get some physio, would be my advice. I've got a bit of a sore wrist here because I was playing with my kids this afternoon. And in the course of playing with my kids this afternoon, I kind of bent my wrist back the wrong way. And it's sore. So I have not touched a pair of drumsticks today, and I've not really touched the piano either. And I'm trying to avoid contact with my mouse as much as possible as well, which, given I'm back to work tomorrow, is going to be difficult. So pain relief and supports will be what I will be doing tomorrow. But yeah, take your time, ease yourself back into it. Don't rush yourself back into it. And then when you do get back into drumming, make sure that your posture when you play is good. Make sure your shoulders are relaxed. Make sure there is no tension running down from your shoulders into your arms, into your hands, and into your fingers, because this whole thing is interconnected. You have tension here in your fingers, you'll have tension in your wrist, you'll have tension up your forearm and into your shoulders. And the other way around. If you've got tension here because there is pain, then that will be reflected all the way down and into your hands and into your fingers, and it will affect other parts of your body. It will affect other muscles, other tendons, and it will affect the way you play. And you could do yourself further damage. So definitely take your time and work on, for now, because you actually playing causes you pain, then the best thing to do is to actually work on accommodating for this by working on your posture and working on relaxing where it hurts, so that when you are playing, when you get to that point where you can, that you are completely relaxed when you play. All the way down your arm into your fingers, and making sure that how you're gripping the sticks. And here's an interesting thing. I really don't like the word grip when we talk about how we hold our sticks, because grip denotes that, when really we're not gripping the sticks. We are guiding the sticks towards the drums and the cymbals. That's all we're doing. The sticks really ought to be doing the work, and our hands are just kind of guiding them in the general direction of where they need to go, rather than actually holding the sticks. So yeah, relax everything. Try and relax everything as much as you can, Mike, and ease yourself back into it. Kyle says, our neighbor plays their Latin dance music. Just hear the freaking bass guitar. See, Latin music? I would have no problem if our neighbors would play, you know, merengues, sambas, salsa, mambos, if they played all of that kind of stuff, or marches or frevos from Brazil. If they played that kind of stuff, I would be more than happy for them to play that at 2 a.m. because I like that kind of music. That's my kind of music. Let's see. Ziggy says, I use near-field monitors at low to mid volume. Monitors close to me, I feel that reduces the room issues. Is that wrong? No. You're absolutely quite right. Mixing at a lower volume with your speakers, you know, kind of a safe distance away so that, you know, at the end of the day, like, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about, you know, that equilateral triangle. It needs to be an equilateral triangle. You know, if you're actually too close to your monitors, you ruin the stereo image, which is going to affect your sense of perspective and your sense of balance when you're working. But yes, the whole low volume thing is a great idea. I do that. Even if it's the middle of the day that I'm working on something, I still have my speakers set to a level that is just above conversational level. The way I did that, once I got all my gear set up in here and I was happy with where everything was and all the treatment was up, I invited my wife to come into the studio, and she pulled up a chair and she sat here, and I said, let's just talk. Let's just talk about, you know, anything. Doesn't really matter. I'm just going to play this track whilst we're talking. And whilst we were talking, I was adjusting the volume of my monitor station to make sure that the speaker output was outputting only just a little bit above the level of our conversation. And then that's it. That is the level that my monitor station stays at. Now, here's the cool thing about the monitor station. It has a dim button. So for the most part, my dim button is lit up. It's switched on because I have everything at that low volume. But if I undo that, if I turn that off, then everything plays back at a much louder volume. So I can check my mixes loud and at that conversational volume. And I can make sure that the integrity of the mix from the highs to the lows remains. So long as when at low volume, I can still hear the melody, the chords, and the rhythm, everything is good. Now, obviously, at a lower volume, you're not going to you're not going to hear the bass quite so much. And that's just the way it is because, you know, low frequency waves require a lot more amplitude to make the air move and for you to be able to hear them. So a low volume, the bass is the first thing that disappears. And that's not to mean that when that happens that your mix is somehow wonky. It really isn't. But if you're trying to figure out a way to make the bass poke through at a low volume, one of the things you can do is on an EQ, you can do a little boost and sweep and try and find that kind of pluck point of the sound of the bass guitar, whether it's with fingers or with the plectrum, and find that and give that a little boost. Not a lot, just enough so that it pokes through the mix a little bit. And then when you've cranked the volume down, you'll still be able to hear that. And your ears, because your ears are clever, your brain is very clever, your brain will fill in the low frequencies because it will identify the bass and go, that's the bass, and it will fill out the sound for you within your ears, what you hear. Because that's how the brain works. The brain is very clever in that respect. So that's a cool little trick that you can do. So I would recommend you give that one a try. I think somebody was trying to message me. Here it was. Oh, dear God. Hang on just a minute. I need to do something. There we go. All right. We're good. Sorry about that. So let's go back and see. Mike says, it's not my posture. I think it's my arthritis. It's like a burning pain that can run down my arm. Yeah, it may well be. It may well be. In which case, probably medication is going to be your best thing, and physical therapy is going to be the best thing. You're going to have to keep that shoulder moving with good exercise. Proper exercise, medically designed exercise is what's going to benefit you to prevent the arthritis from setting into your shoulder too badly. And then in terms of your actual playing, you're going to have to find a way to compensate for it in your playing technique. A good one. Let's see. I'll mix at low volumes because it's easier to hear everything. Absolutely right. Owen says, I'm trying to learn with headphones because my basement is just an open basement. It's not treated. Yeah, mixing with headphones is not a bad thing. People will tell you, some people will definitely tell you that mixing with headphones is a bad idea. It really isn't. I mean, there are Grammy-winning mix engineers out there who mix with headphones on a laptop. Andrew Sheps is one of those. Now, there are a couple of reasons why he is very successful with his headphones on his laptop. 2 reasons. First one, he's been mixing for a very long time. He is exceedingly good at it. So he is highly competent and highly skilled to start with. Second thing is he knows those headphones extremely well. In the same way that you do the room trick with good music played on the speakers that you mix in a room that you're unfamiliar with, so that you can familiarize yourself with what great music sounds like, do the same with your headphones. Listen to great mixes on those headphones and use that as a reference for when you're mixing. How does my mix compare, not in terms of mixing skills with this professional mix, but instead of that, you're wanting to compare the tonality, the stereo image, the balance between the different instruments. And, also, if you find something in your reference track that you go, you know what, that snare drum sound is gorgeous. I want to try and get the snare drum to sound as close to that as I can. You can do that with a reference track. And certainly I would say reference tracks are incredibly useful, incredibly helpful. I have certainly found throughout my mixing career they are incredibly useful and incredibly helpful. Are they essential? I think they are when you're starting out. I think when you're early in your career, then yeah, reference tracks I think are essential. But you do get to a point where you know what a good mix sounds like. And what a good balance sounds like. So, and when you get to that point, they become less necessary. But if you're moving, like we will be in a few months' time, I'm going to have to learn a new room. I've spent 3 years in this room. I know this room pretty well because I have pumped out hundreds of mixes from this room. So I know it really, really well. I know its faults, I know its weaknesses, I know its strengths. I know what gets boosted in here, I know what gets cancelled out in here, and I know how to compensate my mixes for that. So I know this room really well, but the new room, of course, I've never mixed in before. So I'm going to have to learn that room. And, for a little while, my mixes aren't going to be quite as good as they normally would be, because I'm having to figure out that room. And I will be going back to using reference tracks a lot until I have learned that room. So yeah. And of course, another good thing to do is when you're not working, when you're just in your own time, play good music on your speakers so that you even casually and passively, you are listening to good music in your mixing environment on your speakers. And that way, even passively, you're becoming more and more familiar with your room. to the point where you develop an aural memory, a listening memory of what your room sounds like and what good music in your room sounds like, so that when you're mixing, you are referencing in your head the sound and not having to rely upon a reference track. That takes quite a lot of practice to develop those kind of listening skills, but it can be done. It can be done. And I would highly recommend that you do it. Let's see. Mike says, I'm right-handed. There are a lot of things that cause me discomfort, but not like playing drums, right-handed hi-hat hand. Right, yeah. Yeah, you might like to try playing open-handed and see how that works out for you. It's something I have actually explored when I do play match grip, which is not very often, but I do switch between the two grips. I will play my right hand, because I'm left-handed, my right hand on the hi-hat, but I'll also quite often switch over to my other hand and play that way. And it's a good way to develop, hand independence as well, and, strengthen up your weaker hand, for example. You may want to give that a try and see what you think. John Edgar says, what speaker setup would you suggest for a small home studio the size of your studio? Yeah, this is actually the biggest room that I've had. And I'm using the PreSonus RSE5s in here. And I would say for a room this size, they are perfect. And they were pretty darn good for my other room as well, which was certainly a fair bit smaller than this. If I had a bigger room, if I had more throwback that way, I think I've only got about 11 feet that way. If I had another 4 or 5 feet back that way, I might consider getting the next size up. I might consider getting 7s or 8s. In a small room, you don't want big speakers. You want small speakers. The reason being is bigger speakers are going to chuck out a lot more power. And in a smaller room, waves is basically acoustic physics. Sound waves they take a certain amount of time to develop and reach their fullness before they start to decay. So in a small room, if you have a lot of low frequencies, the wavelength is much, much longer. So they take longer to develop. So for example, a 40 cycles per second wavelength is about 16 feet. So if your bass is going that way, or even if it's actually going back that way and it's only got like 1.5 feet before it hits a wall, it's slamming into that wall and bouncing back, and all of that bass is coming straight back into your room, but it's coming back with some degree of phase cancellation as well. So and the same being if you're in a small room. Let's say this was an 8-foot room in terms of length this way, and the bass was going this way. Well, it's only halfway developed before it hits that wall and comes back. And then by the time I'm hearing the bass directly, and then I'm hearing the reflected bass, and you're getting some cancellation and things like that. And you really don't want those kind of things. So you want small speakers in a small room. And if you've got a much bigger room, like a 15 or 16 or 17 foot long room by 11 foot wide or something like that, then, that's a pretty big room. So you could go up to 8 or 10 inch speakers, to be honest. But yeah, small room, small speakers would be my advice. Common Ground says, getting ready to master an EP from our band. Could you comment on some key tweaks that you think help with a professional sound? Common mistakes. Yeah, mastering is frequently regarded as a dark, kind of mysterious art. Really isn't. It really isn't as dark or mysterious as you think. If the mix is really good, essentially a mastering engineer, all he is doing is applying the final wax and polish, to use an auto detailing analogy. That's essentially all you're doing. The car is painted, the car is clean, it's washed, it's done, it's ready to go. And all you're doing is applying that final coat of wax and giving it a good sheen so that it looks extra special. That's all a mastering engineer does. How do you do that? There's I could do a whole video series on mastering. I could do several video series on mastering. My good friend Ian Shepherd over at productionadvice.co.uk has an entire website dedicated to home mastering because he is a mastering engineer. He is an extremely successful mastering engineer. He's also a great educator. He's also a good friend. So I think if you want to go in to a little bit of how to achieve a good result with mastering in your own home studio, you can go further wrong. In fact, you would do yourself a big favor if you went and checked out productionadvice.co.uk, which is Ian's site, and it's full of extremely good, useful stuff, and he has some courses there that you can purchase as well if you want to go that little bit deeper. But personally, you're talking when you get to mastering, you're not talking about dramatic moves anymore. You're talking about subtleties. You're talking about a tiny little boost here, a tiny little cut here. Listen to the music. Let the music tell you what it needs. You don't just slap on the wax and willy-nilly polish the car. You apply polish to the right kind of thickness, the right kind of level. You don't want to over polish. You don't want to over wax. So, to be honest, you're talking about a little boost here. Maybe you're thinking, you know what? It would be really nice if these rhythm guitars just poked through this mix just a tiny little bit more. So you find that frequency band with an EQ where those are living in the stereo mix, and you give it a little boost. Now you have to remember that when you're boosting and cutting with an EQ on a stereo mix, you're boosting and cutting everything. You're boosting and cutting the entire mix. So you have to be sparing. You have to be careful. You have to be thoughtful about what you're doing. And the same goes with compression. You are compressing the whole thing. So again, you need to apply some subtleties. Now, there are some instances where you need to actually do a little bit of corrective work. So, you might find, there is just way too much low end in this mix. In which case, the first thing you'll be doing is grabbing a high pass filter and trying to eke out some of that too much low end. Things like that. And the same with compression. You're talking just kind of a little bit here, a little bit there, maybe half a dB of compression with, a slow attack and a medium length release. That's really what you're talking about. So yeah, don't kind of be scared of mastering. It's not scary. is essentially all I'm trying to say. Cool. Okay, Mike. Excellent. The reviews of the 8 say you need to play them loud at a distance if you believe the reviews. The thing with playing speakers loud is the speakers will definitely open up when you play them loud. They will absolutely open up. But you have to remember what your ears do when they encounter loud sounds. They compress the audio. But they also, your ears, boost the highs and the lows. That's just how your ears work. It's how your brain interprets audio. So you have to bear those kind of things in mind. The longer you listen to loud music for, the quicker your ears will fatigue, and the quicker you will start running into that point where you are making poor decisions with your mix, because your brain has started to get foggy, your brain has started to get confused. Whereas if you have everything at that kind of conversational level, if you have your speakers at that conversational level, and only occasionally check it at a louder volume, your ears are not going to fatigue quite so quickly, and you'll maintain your sense of perspective for a lot longer. So think about that. The speaker's size is more to do with the size of the room than it is to do with anything else. Now, 8-inch speakers are going to sound fantastic, loud. They are. It's just a fact. But loud isn't always necessarily the best thing for mixing. It might be the best thing for listening to the final mix when you're done and you're standing at the back of the room and you're doing a listen through for your final check to see if anything still stands out that needs addressed. You may well crank up the volume, go stand at the back of the room and listen to what it sounds like there. That's when you can open up the speakers. But really, when you're sat here in this little apex that we've been talking about, you don't want the speakers loud. So, yeah, I hope that helps. Ken says, can you demo the easiest way to set up a reference track to be able to quickly A-B between that and your mix in Studio One? Sounds like a basic question, but I could never get how to do this. The easiest way, and I can kind of show you that. The easiest way. Let me go over to Studio One for a second. I just have this little mock-up here. So really ignore the number of channels and the number of tracks. They're kind of largely irrelevant. Here's what I do. Let's say we've got, what have we got here? Let's have a listen to start with. All right, so we got Fender Rhodes, we got drums, and we got bass here. So let's label these. These haven't been labeled. I think that's the Rhodes. Let's just check. Yep, it is. And then this we know is the drums because it's the virtual drummer fat. So we'll call that drums. And therefore, process of elimination, this is the bass. All right, so first thing you would do, I don't know if this is how you work, but this is certainly how I work. I would now have a bus for each of these. And if I have like vocals, horns, strings, everything else, they all go to a bus. So for now, just for right now, I'm just going to go add a bus, and then we'll go add a bus there as well. And this one has got, what's this one got in it? That's got the Rhodes, so we'll call this keys. Helps if I spell it right. Keys bus. And then this one has got drums in it, so we'll call this drums. Drum bus. And then this one is, by process of elimination, bass bus. Now, I always color my buses to a color that I do not use in my regular mix, which is red. So I now have all of those red. And then you would carry on so on down the line. So you would have your vocal bus, your backing vocal bus, your horns bus, your strings bus, your guitars bus, your ukulele bus, your kitchen sink bus, your whatever, going down the line, okay? And then what you would do is you would then send all of these, or you wouldn't send them, you'd route them to another bus, and then this one we would call this mix bus. All right, and to make this sure that this one stands out, I'm going to color this one white. Okay, so it's the same as my main. And so now all of these are now going to my mix bus. And on my mix bus, this is where all of my processing goes. Okay, all of my processing goes here. I do not put any mix bus processing on here, ultimately, because the only thing that is going to be sent to this main output is going to be my reference track. Let's make our reference track. So we'll close the console, we'll go T, and we'll call this ref track. All right, then we'll go back to our console, and there's our ref track, and we'll make this, I don't know, we'll make this pink, all right? And we'll just make sure that in our color palette options for anything that we do throughout the rest of our mix, we do not use either red or pink, so that we make sure that these are distinct and separate. And then this is the only thing, the only channel that is going to be routed to the main, okay? And then you would drag in your reference track from, I don't know, from your files tab somewhere. Let's see, can I simulate this? Yeah, I can simulate this. Now let's say we want to, we're going to use this as our reference track. So I'm going to come back over here. And then what I can do is when I want to just listen to my reference track, I can solo this guy. All right, and then I can compare it to my other mix by soloing the mix bus. And then I can solo this guy again. And there you go. And that's essentially how you would do it. By using your solo key command and, you know, just kind of alternating between having this soloed and this soloed. And that would be how you A/B between the two. All right? So I hope that that helps. Let's see. Yeah, so that answered Ken's question. Would I post the URL? Mike has done that for us because Mike is a very good moderator. Well done, Mike. Give yourself a pat on the back. Jared says, it is good practice that all big studios, and I have 3 sets of monitors. I have the Presonus 8s and the Eris 5s and the larger speaker system with 18s and 15s. That's what I do. Okay, cool. If you've got multiple speaker setups and multiple systems, then you just need to make sure that they're all outputting at the same level. So, you know, whether you're listening to the 8s or the 5s or the 15s or the 18s, whatever you're listening to, everything is being listened to at exactly the same dB output level. Then, you know, that is good scientific A/B testing. So there you go. Hope that all helps. David says, I think mastering was more important in the days of vinyl. It's still important. It is absolutely still important. But yes, it was exceptionally important in the days of vinyl. I mean, Ian will give you some of the history of how mastering developed and why it was developed. He has a whole bunch of content on the history of mastering and why it exists and why it is necessary and why, you know, why it is something that we do. To our mixes. So yeah, that's what I would say. Mike says my shoulder doesn't let me do that. Yeah, right now it won't, because you're in pain. You right now you need to seek out some physiotherapy. You need to go and make sure that you're doing the correct exercises to relieve you of the tension in that shoulder, be it arthritic tension, whatever it is that's causing the problem. You need to find a way to relieve that, and exercise it in the appropriate manner. I'm not a physiotherapist, and that's what you need if you want to be able to play drums again. You need proper, good physio. I see a sports physiotherapist every month, and I go through a whole routine because some of you may or may not be aware, but the cartilage in my knees, both of them, is basically wasting away. It's crumbling away. And that meant that I had to, when I was about 19, I had to give up the potential of playing professional sport, or at least playing sport to a very high level. Maybe not necessarily professional, but certainly to a high level. And I could have gone down that road, or I could have gone down the professional music road. My knees ended up answering that question for me. And so ever since I was about 18 or 19, I had to stop. I basically had to stop playing sports for a good period of time, where I had quite intensive physiotherapy. Got myself to a point in my 20s, where my early 20s, where I could play again. So I played for like local village and local club sides, playing cricket. And I did that for a little while. I did that for maybe 2 or 3 years in my 20s. And then I found that my knees just couldn't handle it at all, and I had to basically stop altogether. But in order to keep my knees exercised so that they don't completely stop working, I have to have intensive physiotherapy every month, and I'm probably going to need to do that for many, many years. I am on pretty hefty medication for my knees, because the pain is pretty intensive, non-stop 24 hours a day. So I do know what you're going through with your shoulder. Does it affect my drumming? It has done. It certainly has done. I had to change the way that I played the hi-hat and the bass drum pedals with my feet, because my knees wouldn't allow me to do apply certain techniques like heel up. So I had to relearn, having been a heel up player for a lot of years, I had to relearn how to play heel down, so that it's all coming from my calf muscles and my ankles, and not from my knees. And so yeah, and learning to actually just use my entire leg to make the movements sometimes as well, not just my knees. So I hope that helps. What I really need to do is stop being a bus driver. Well, that's something you're going to have to work out how to do, mate. For sure. You're going to have to think about that carefully. Yeah, that's a tough one, man. All right, we are done for the day. There's been really good questions there. And we had a small but very nice little crowd in, which is cool. Let's see what we peaked at. We peaked at 26, which is nice. 26 is a nice little number. I would, we're averaging above 20 now, which is great. I'd like us to average more like 30 or 40. So if you know folks who are around YouTube and are around social media, and you think that my Sunday Night Live show would help them, would benefit them, or some of my other YouTube videos would help them or benefit them, then please do send them a link to the channel, send them a link to the show, get them in here, bring your friends, absolutely bring your friends, and encourage them to ask questions. I mean, that's what this Sunday Night Live is mostly about. It's mostly about your questions. It's kind of what drives how this show works, rather than me just talking. So, yeah, please do that. It'd be great if we could get a bigger crowd. It'd be awesome. Ziggy says, I've totally enjoyed this studio discussion. Thank you. Hope you feel better. Gotta go. Yeah, we are done as well. So it remains for me to say a big thank you to everybody for coming. You guys are awesome. And I will see you on Wednesday over on the Home Studio Trainer YouTube channel for Songwriting Simplified at the same time as we do this. It's 6 p.m. Central Time, which works out to be, if you're in the UK, it's midnight GMT, or it's 1 o'clock in the morning for Central Europe. Because I know I have some folks that come in here who are from that time zone. So yeah, take care. And I will see you all very soon. Good night. Oops, I pressed the wrong button.